Okay, so again, I think we should all work on the same 0, 0 position, because that's going to be critical for overlaying everything. Um, Everybody's working off of the same model. Is that true? So if we said like the cuff off here, if that corner is 0, 0, 0, would that work for everyone? Like this is in everybody's, right? Or the streets, okay, or the train station, like that. That corner there can be 0, 0, 0. Yeah, everybody has that. Is that 3D? No. Okay, so that'll be at 0, 0, 0. All right, let's try to FB. Let's try to SAT export this out. So we'll go to export selected. This will typically work. Let me make sure. So there's the SAT file format. Okay. So let's just throw this in Alex. All right. So this is. So we'll just leave it all default. Okay, it says no curves. This is the one. It's only going to take geometry. So I assume a lot of this is not 3D, which is maybe okay, but let's see what happens. All right, so now we're in 3ds Max. In 3ds Max, we want to go to customize units, set up, and make sure we're in meters, okay? The other thing too is you got to double check, what are you guys working on here? I assume you're in meters. Just got to double check all this, right? So we want to be in meters, and then system unit setup also wants to be 1 unit equals 1 meter, okay? And then we can go to import, and we'll go to import. It's thinking. So let's just go. So there's a set, we'll just say open. We'll leave this all by default. And it comes in, okay? So we're not getting any line geometry, which is not a big deal. We can import that separate. But here we can see the 3D model. If we come here and pick one of these, if we go to the modifier stack, this is where we see this sort of body object. So this is working, keeping the geometry specific to this sort of NURB quality, okay? If we right click on this, we can turn it into an editable poly and collapse it, okay? And we can highlight faces, so I can show you real quick how to make like a rendering, like really quick, okay? With all of these. So I'll do them this whole demo. So let's bring the line work in. Yeah, we're going to do it UV and by face, yes. So let's go to, let's come back here. So I'm going to go ahead and just do select objects, and I'll just pick curves, okay? And then because they're curves, we're going to do export selected, and we'll pick DWG. So AutoCAD DWG. Oops, spelled that wrong. That's all right. And then we'll go to import, import, DWG. Now, there's two DWG imports. There's the new version, and then there's the old school. Let's look at the legacy. So if we go to import, we can pick legacy. At least they should still have it. Legacy AutoCAD. I would use that one. Legacy AutoCAD. Hit open. You want to merge it into one scene. And then it gives you some options here. Convert to single objects, maybe. Let's not convert blocks to groups. Skip frozen, that's good. Skip hatches. Debating if you want to convert them, it's up to you. But the good thing is they'll go by layers. So if we hit OK, there's all our line geometry now. So because we use 0, 0, everything's the same. Anybody can start inputting this stuff into 3ds Max really quickly. And always have to just like, always have to remember what 3D Orbit is. Yeah, but it's not working on the Mac, I think. No, it's not working. Not working, as my daughter would say. Okay, so now we have our line geometry. So we can come to a top view. And now what's going to have to happen, Alt-W is min-max toggle. And if you just highlight, we can min-max. Alt-W is a good shortcut. I'm not sure why. It's stuck on pan for some reason. It's with a Mac sometimes, the shortcut doesn't work. So 3D Orbit is over here. So also your window controls are also here. You can also painfully use the view cube, which sort of sucks, but it's fine. All right, so here we are. So let's go. So Alt-W, Alt-W. Let's go to a couple of preferences here. Yeah, we can leave that for now. Snaps. Yeah, we'll leave those settings for now. Here we have sort of all the specific for how to view this. So if we wanted the view cube off and on, turn off the grid, our view itself, how are we sort of viewing this, if it's smooth highlights. There's additional also, like if you want to show edge faces. So this turns on all the edge faces. So even if we have smooth highlights and so forth. So depending on the other computers, you're also going to get ability to do a show it like rendered. So depending on what type of video card you have. Like obviously on mine, I don't have a strong enough card to handle that. So the other thing we have to determine is setting up the orientation. If we're going to project this and render it, we want the model to match, right? So we're going to need to make a bounding box. We don't have this on this model, but we know how big it was, right? How big was this box? And then how big was it in meters then? So it was 1 to 500, right? So, right? You remember, can you open that and verify it? Because what we're going to need to do eventually is render this consistent to a scale. Okay? And the scale is really going to be a rectangular box. Now with 3ds Max, all your controls are done through this command panel on the right. So if I want to draw like a rectangle, I can come here and draw a rectangle. And then if I go to the modifier, I can give the size of the rectangle. I assume it was 800 by 800. That sounds right, Nadine? No? You sure? So this will be sort of our, we'll see what exactly it is, but we'll see what the bounding box is. Sorry, it's like a weird color. It doesn't show up there. And if you want to change any colors, we can change them here. This is how you rename them. So everything is named. So although we have layers and we can control layers, typically we select our objects through more like object based. So we have like a object, so we know like this is a model, and I can select it. So that's that piece right there. So if we go back into a 3D view, and we select something, we can see what it's called. And it typically takes, in this case, the name of the file was SAT, but we can rename this. So whatever you want to name this, we can go around and rename these. Now you're going to be working, depending on who you are, you'll be working on different parts, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see how we put this all together. Okay? So let's look at adding some really basic materials. Okay? So I'm going to pick build A. If I want to take a quick measurement, yeah, they have helpers. So if we come here and we go to helpers, there's like a tape measure. We can turn on our 3D snaps and set it to endpoints. And we can see that building's 200 meters, yeah? So I can pick this tower, go to my body object. I'm going to go ahead and turn it into an edit poly, or add an edit poly. So I'm adding a modifier, edit poly on this thing. Okay. So we can sort of pick these faces if we want, maybe not yet. But more importantly, what I'm going to do is add a UVW map as a box, and then give it a certain height that represents maybe a part of a building height. So say we want to do 3 stories. How tall? Should we say just 5 meters for right? Let's do more than 3 stories. Let's do 10 stories. So we'll do 50 meters as a starting point. Okay. This make a little sense? Maybe? Now you can see the orientation of what our building is to what our map is not matching. So I'm going to do a couple things. We typically control what's visible and what's not visible is by going to the display, and then you can say hide unselected. So now we've isolated our one sort of tower. I'm going to go back to the modifier, go to the UVW map, open this and go to Gizmo. And from Gizmo, if I know the angle, I'm going to turn off my snaps, I could rotate it, but I'm just going to guesstimate it right now. And then we can say fit, and I'll try to fit it. Okay? And then I'll switch this back to, what do we have this at? 50, right? what did we say, 5 stories at 10? So it's 50 tall now. Just turn off. So the gizmo is how we control the UVW map. So what is a UVW map? A UVW map allows us to control a map. So I'm going to quickly make a material. So I'm going to come up here, go to materials. This is the default. I'm not going to get the materials I want if I want to use a specific type of render engine. So I'm going to go to the render dialog box, which is the famous teapot. Go to common, all the way at the bottom, assign renderer. I'm going to assign mental ray. So the NVIDIA mental ray. And then I'm also going to turn on force two-sided. Force two-sided will render both sides in case something gets flipped. That'll be more important later. Come here now. Now if I come to an empty slot, so this is like your, I always describe this as like the painter's palette, okay? So we can see X amount of materials. This is not all the materials we can have. I just resampled this to 6x4. A lot of times we can have as many materials as we want, basically, until we run out of memory. But we might not see them all at the same time. So this is basically the ones we're working on. Typically, you probably won't fill this up. I'm also going to change this to a cube. So it's representing what my building actually is. Right? And then I'm going to go to standard. And we'll make these materials and I'll share them with you. I'll go then to mental ray and go to arc and design. And I might pick I'm going to pick glass thin geometry maybe as a start. Okay? And then we're going to start looking at more specific parts. Eventually we'll turn on ambient inclusion, which we'll see how that works. And then we have what's called cutout, okay? So we'll go to cutout, and basically what I'm going to do is make like a mullion. So I'm going to give this thing a pattern, okay? So to do that, I'm just going to go to Photoshop. I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys right now, but this is like Google is, so this is where you guys can wander around the city and take pictures. I'm just going to Google glass. And we'll try to find, but I'll bring all my materials with that I've done this already. So here's a good one. So people make these things, like you don't even have to make them. And I'll start with a facade. So this is where I think you guys can source facades. Sometimes it's best to have some with more variation. Let's see what this one looks like. So we'll start with this. Again, this is where I think you can take pictures of facades. Again, I also have a lot of maps like this already made. Just save it in here for now. So we'll open this up. we're going to make a couple things. So let's assume this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, perfect. Oh, come on. Okay, why in the world is my guides not working? Background. 1, 2. Yeah. Acting strange. Let's look at the image size. Yeah, it's not that big. All right, so let's start with this, and then we'll do let's do this as a diffuse, and then we'll do the cutout. All right, so we have this. Let's save it as a JPEG. Typically, you don't want your maps that large because it will kill your file. So what we're going to do now is go to our all the way to our diffuse here, and where there's color, to the right there's a little dialog box, and we're going to pick a bitmap. And then we're going to go ahead and find that map. Okay? And then we got to do a couple things. Okay, we want to make sure use real world is not there, and it's tiled 1 to 1, which is fine. And that should be it for now. Then let's go to where it says transparency, and let's kick this to 0 for right now. Okay. And then what we're going to do is apply this to this object, all right? So if I have it selected, switch that to display. If I pick that, I just click here, which is apply to object. And then we also have, to show that in the scene, my video card maybe cannot handle it. Let me just close this real quick. So again, we make this sort of map that sits on top of that one, turn that one off and save it, go back to Max. We then go back to our material editor. And this is where we can use the cutout. Bitmap. Grab facade O. A little bit hard to read, but you can see we have it backwards. So the black needs to be white, the white needs to be black. So we just open this and invert it. And then save it. And this will update in the scene. Okay. So now we're cut through, our spandrels are there, and our mullions are there. So now we need to adjust this is always a little bit tricky. Sorry guys, I'm gonna move that map. I think that's gonna be refraction. No, that's just gonna be the color. So again, sorry guys, we're gonna try that on a translucency weight. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn everything on again, which is hide, unhide all. Just thinking. Crashed again, hold on. All right, so I have a material on it. Let's look at just the controlling the channels on this, I guess. Well, what will be easier actually, we can start to dissect this. So if we don't want the top to appear, what I can do is actually remove that. So I can detach it. And that can have its own material. So I'm going to make a default material. So I'm just going to use Arc and Design, and I'm going to use, just for now, matte finish, and get everything pretty white. And apply it to that. And then what I'm going to do for the rest of the project too is select this and just say, edit, select invert. And I'm just going to apply this sort of white material to everything, okay, as a start. Max this out. Now I need to do a couple things to activate the lighting in here. I'm going to go to the Create button under here, go to Systems, and go to Daylight. And I'll get all these questions. Just hit yes everything to this. Yes. I'm going to make a compass and then drag out a sun. And then we can hit Modify. So it's a little hard to see here, but I basically dragged out a sun here. And then I want to switch everything to MR. So this is mental ray sun, mental ray sky. And then you'll get another question, yes. So if I zoom in on this now, I can do a couple things. I'm going to set up a window. Did we figure out what size we need? 800 by 100. Okay, so we're right. So this is, this projector can do not that much. The max is 1024 by 768. So we can do 768 wide. That's our resolution. Okay? So I'm going to set this up for custom 768 by 768. Yeah? and then lock it. Now, we could do blow up. And basically what we need to do is get it as close as possible to 768, you know, within our area. And then I'll just click a quick rendering of that. Now we're probably not going to see, only thing we will see is where the buildings are. You see, it will take time to obviously just do a simple. Especially on this machine. And what we'll read basically is the buildings and the shadows from the buildings, right? And this is something we can project on top of the model as long as it lines up somewhat, right? Now, putting the materials on the facade, not really critical here, but if we want to set up a camera, we would have to set up, obviously we want to see a lot more than this. So we need to manipulate the proportions of the crop. So in this case, I would go to height, I would go much higher than wider. And then what I can do is turn on show safe frame. Oh, got it backwards, sorry. So it's 500 by 1500 width. So that's probably too much. Let's try 1,000. That's probably okay. And then we can do a crop and crop out what we want for like the view. And it still looks like it overcropped it. Okay, not the fastest machine to be rendering on. I think the resolution is so low, we can't zoom in. It's hard for you guys to see that. I know your building's not this big mass thing, you know, massive thing, but. I'll cancel this, just save it real quick. Yeah, so you guys can understand what that would start to look like. I'm surprised the crop, that was a little weird that the crop was strange. Another trick with the camera, since I have this, let's go to a top view. If you pick the camera, we can change sort of like how wide the lens is. And of course, get in a lot closer. But we can also look vertical. Which is a view you never want. Like, I always hate the view where the building, everybody asks why is the building leaning. But we can camera correct this. So what we can do is set up a I don't see my I think I have to pick the camera. Video card is freaked out again. Alright, we'll wait for that. Let me open this real quick. Restart it. Okay, there we go. Alright, so if we look back here, I'm going to go to the camera. If I right click on the camera, I should get Apply Camera Correction Modifier, and this will straighten out the view, you see? So we're looking up, but at the same time looking straight. I know it sounds confusing, but that's how you can get these sort of views that okay. Alright, let's look at going back to a top view. So back to our top view. So let's think about, like, say you want to show some type of movement happening along the site, right? So what we need to do is basically, first thing is just create some geometry, which is going to be a plane. That we can eventually adjust, both its width and its count in segments, like how many segments does it have. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. And we can adjust the width. The next thing is we need to figure out the path it needs to follow. The tricky thing here is always wherever this object is where the path goes. So if we know we wanted to show sort of movement happening along this, like vehicle movement, like as a diagram, as a line work, right? What I can do then is come here and draw a NURBS curve, point curve. This is a little tricky. So that's my path. Okay? So I'm going to take both of these, go to a front view. If I'm going to render this and I want it to lay on top, I have to send it up, obviously work somewhere in elevated, so it's going on top of the building. The other option is too, is we render it different. Like, I wouldn't render all the building the whole time. I would render it once, so I'll show you how to do that, and then render the path. But I still would maybe move it to the top. I then would select the object, go to a modifier, and what I'm going to do is a path deform. So path deforms, it takes this object and deforms it along a path. I'm going to pick the path and pick that path there. And then I need to align it, in this case, in the Y direction. And it's a little hard to see right now, but it puts it to the center of the object. Okay? So there's this plane, and then there's a center. Well, if we add we should be able to add an edit poly. Maybe not an edit poly. I'm surprised. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I guess we could add the gizmo here. We just need to move that gizmo back to where the path should have been. So I went into gizmo and tucked out the path. Close that. And now I can start to move it. So you see how it's moving? And I can adjust the width. So I say the width was, the length's okay, but the width is not good. So that's it moving. But say I want to show it as a stretch. Yeah, it's like stretching in the wrong spot. So I'd want to stretch this thing out. So it actually maybe goes to there, right? Does that make sense so far? Like we're showing a path. Now I can increase the segments. Maybe we'll put it at 100. The only reason I increased the segments to make it look a little more. So this would be my 0 position. And now I have to look at my timeline. Okay, so this is a timeline. These are in frames. And typically we're like 30 frames per second. Okay. So if we're running, say we want this to last 1, 2, 3 seconds, just take 30 times 3. No? And we can set the frames per second. If we right click here, this is this little clock here. This will bring up how we set this up. And this is the overall time per frames. So you can see by default, NTSCs, what we're working on, is 30 frames per second. Time display is in frames. Or we can time display it in seconds. So right now it's set to 6 seconds. So we'd want 90, right? So if we hit OK, we see now we go from 0 to 90. So what we need to do is, if I come here, I know this needs to be set to 3. If I come to the end where it's 90, and then I click on Auto Key, this turns on the animation, and then whatever I do, it records it. I turn off Auto Key, and now I have that recorded. So if I hit the play button, it goes. And it just loops right now. So let's do that again. I can take this, I can take the same thing and just clone it. So we can clone it as a copy, not instance. Instance will instance it. So clone it. I have another one now. I'm going to go ahead and draw another path. So So maybe there's a train path. This is the U2 coming underneath. What I'll do is I'll pick this. I have two of them. This is another one. I'll delete that. Now again, I need to get it orientated in the right sort of. Oh, careful with that. And again, 3ds Max, a lot of it's freeform, so don't be afraid to do it that way. So I'm going to take this path deform. Pick the new path. Switch it to Y. So say we want that to move as well. Auto key it. I think I'll go to the end, let's say. Oh, too far. Just off scene. So if I play this now, we have sort of, so this can be showing so like movement through there, right? Yeah. So the auto key basically does this. So if I come here and I have just a box, right? And I want to move the box from there to there at 20. I just turn auto key on, and it makes an automatic key to there. You see how it makes a key? And if I turn it off, it goes from 0 to 20. And then if I want another from 20 to 50, I auto key it, and I just move it here, and it puts another, it auto keys it. So you can manually key these things in, but it's just easier. So you got to decide where it is. And we can always change the speed of these things by moving the keys. So it just makes a key for that. So say I want this to move faster, I can move it here, so when I play this, that train's moving really fast. Yeah, the key, it just, basically if you have no keys, it'll put the original position at 0, and wherever you end up, wherever it was. So in this case, it's not a move, in this case, it's a percentage sort of stretch. So what's animated is actually that number, that percentage. Duration is how long I want, like the transpire. So in the end, I might say I want more things to happen, right? Like all of a sudden, Hana wants to say I want to highlight this area, right? So I can say, okay, let's make, after that train goes through, so let's increase the time to 200, or 200. And now I want to have like an area highlighted. So what I can do is make a, yeah, let's go ahead and make a circle actually. Okay. And then what I'll do is surface that. Okay. And then I'll come here to circle and make it 0. And then at time 200, I want it to get big. Okay. Maybe not that big. Maybe that big. But I want it to activate. I'm going to turn it off. I want it to start at 90. And I'm going to move that where this thing ends there. Okay? So if I play that now, it's going to be like, train goes, there comes the cars, boom, that's that area. Like we're highlighting that area. And say I say that's not fast enough for me, I can move that. And I can say it's not large enough for me, so what I can do is I can move, go to time, where I want to go to that time. So it's 124. So I'm at 124. I can turn on the auto key again and go back to the circle and make it bigger. As long as it's on the same time, it won't add another key. So if I play this now, and then I can say I want it to go small then. So I can take this key and copy it. So it's going to go here, boom, hit, get big, go away. Maybe I want it to stay big for a little long, so I can copy that key here. So then it plays like big, hover, small. Just okay, I see your hand. Let me just show you one more thing. I can take this and then highlight another area later, copy it over here, take those keys and just move them over. Highlight that area, go, highlight that area, go. You can put an image on it. Yeah, I can have text on it. We can take this right here. So let me just turn. You can animate a train along a path. I would stay away from that. Keep it so, yeah, keep it really diagrammatic. Just because they'll start getting really heavy. You'll see these will render really fast, even on my slow machine. Because basically in the end, this is what you would render. So we would take this, hold on, let me turn everything on again. Say this is our, I need that box. Okay, so I can take this, I can put a, in this case, I would use a real basic material. And I can use like a diffuse, even put like a checker on it. Put it on face. And then we can tile it. Let me reset that. Let's put it back to 768. Yeah, region might not be. Now when we do this, we don't want to use mental ray. So let's go ahead and let me use mental ray for this. And this is where this is where we'll get a little bit tricky. You basically also want this as large as possible on the screen. And I'm going to let's increase the resolution to 1200. And we'll crop it. Let's go ahead and render this. Yeah, not yet. I'm going to mental ray this so I have the buildings as an underlay. Just apply that white material to it. So we'll render this first so we have a... Let me do the blow up. Let's actually do a blow up. I don't know why the blow up's not working. So this is where we can have all the other buildings 3D modeled, and we just, render them. If we give a difference between the street, it'll look similar to what we have here, but there'll have to be some variation between the street and and the buildings. And then when we render we need to render the other parts with transparency. So when we lay it in Premiere, we can lay them on top. So I'll show you that in a minute. And here too, we can do a lot of Photoshop. So after, a lot of the animation stuff can be all Photoshop too, if it's not animated. It's easier to do the animation stuff in here. This takes a little time. Make sure I have Premiere on here. So the idea is you'll want to render this bottom part once, right? And then everything else will be, you'll see, it'll be much faster. So for you guys coordinating all your models, this will be critical that it somehow gets together into one scene, you know? Unbelievable. It's the problem with 3ds Max. The software keeps on getting heavier and heavier to where. Should have brought my other machine. Okay, see our dude, we don't want our dudes casting shadows. So that's easy. You can select an object and turn it off from casting shadows. Okay, I'm not going to wait for this. So let's just save it where it's at. So this will be our base. And we can save it as Alright, so say that we're to finish. What I'm going to do now is switch the renderer to the scanline, default scanline renderer. And the only things I want on now are the new sort of animated parts. Okay. So I want to render the exact same scene though. I'll do a test render of nothingness, but just to see how that looks. So with scanline, it's really fast. It just sort of goes through. I'm going to go ahead and unhide the sun. Just going to delete it. This is probably what you want to do is save as. So it should just use default lighting now, so it's really fast, so there's no lighting in the scene. And now I need to render these all out. So I'll do a range, or the full range. I want the same pixel count, but I need to change the location, so I need to set up where it saves, so file, render, output. So what it's going to do is render one frame at a time and save each frame. And that's what we bring into Premiere. So I'll make a new folder in here. Let's call it Annie for now. And then we need to pick the format. So typically I always pick Targa. They're a little bit large, but, and we want to make sure it's 32-bit, but whatever the default is typically correct. We do not need to see it render the window. It'll save time. And we want to go 0. And then we can skip. If it's taking too long, we would be able to skip, but let's just go with it. So I'll pause. Save as test 2. Close that, go back to here. Now we need to make a new project. And we'll just hit OK. Let's resume. All right, so now we need to import the actual media, right? So we can import. And again, this hasn't really been fixed, but let's just bring it in the way it is. So there's our test base. And what we do, we need to make a new sequence. So what I did is I just drag and drop that into my sequence, and then it matches what the video is. So this is like our scene. What I'll maybe do is, let me switch this. Hold on, let me just stop this real quick.